So here is a question for you, a very simple question. What is a book that you love, that you absolutely love, and you think can be better? So essentially, criticize a book that you love. So in today's video, I'm going to criticize 5 actually. And the first one I have read recently and I've really loved and I've enjoyed. In fact, it's The Eye of the World, and in fact, I have read book 2, The Great Hunt into the Wheel of Time. I am absolutely loving the journey so far, but there is quite a good number of criticism that I have for The Eye of the World. Some of it is already fixed in The Great Hunt, and I hope the remaining ones will be fixed as I keep reading the story, the series, the epic, right? And so moving forth from that point, the criticism goes as follows. It is a very unique story that is wrapped in a very generic plot. So, it is a very unique story. How is it unique? It's unique in terms of the protagonist Randall Thor and the magic system channeling, okay? The one power. And so essentially the way this goes is that you have magic, in other words, the male half of the magic system, leading to this degradation of sanity. Essentially, the person is more prone to becoming insane the more power they tap into, and they essentially can really go insane. It creates a dilemma for Randall Thor, the chosen one, because he is the dragon reborn, because he is supposed to save the world, but the more power he taps into, the more he risks becoming the villain, the more he risks becoming like Louis Therin, as we meet him in the prologue, the last dragon reborn, where he essentially went insane because he tapped into a lot of that power, because it was corrupted by the Dark One. And essentially because he did that, what ends up happening is that he goes insane and he kills his family. And we meet him in the prologue looking for his family, calling their name, but he killed them. So he's absolutely freaking nuts. And so this is very beautiful dilemma. I have not seen this in any fantasy book in my entire life. This carries such beautiful character dynamic. You don't know how much I love this. This is the magic system helping to tell the story. You can see this, for example, in a lot of other stories where, like, for example, the Stormlight Archive, The Way of Kings, you have the magic connected to the character development. Like, for example, the Knights Radiant, they have oaths. And you have to speak these oaths to, essentially become one of them. And this is like magic system, right? And this magic system happens to enable character development, because these are good lessons to learn, and to speak them, you ought to actually believe them. And so the character has to go on a character journey, character arc, right? And they have to discover more about themselves, and so on and so forth. This is beautiful. This is fantasy being used to tell a story. And I love this. I really love this. I love this more than anything. I'll always scream this off the top of my lungs. This is one of the most beautiful things that an author can do if they are writing within the fantasy genre, which is use the fantasy to tell the story. Eye of the World, The Wheel of Time, Randall Thor, the magic system, channeling, they all come together and they help, there's this mishmash where they help to tell the story. You have Moraine, who's like a female Gandalf. Come on, that's interesting. There is just a lot of things that are unique about the Wheel of Time. But the plot of The Eye of the World is so painfully generic that all of this is hard to notice if you don't really pay attention to how awesome it is and how unique Randall Thor, for example, can be. And so it's sad that the plot for Eye of the World is very, very painfully generic, but at the same time, the story itself, The Wheel of Time, is one of the most unique fantasy stories ever told. So that's my criticism for The Eye of the World. The plot is generic, everything else is phenomenal. Let's talk about Name of the Wind. I have really enjoyed this book. I love this book. It was the first fantasy book that I have reread a second time. I absolutely love this story. I really do. There is just a lot of things to love about it. The prose, the character work with Kavoth. Essentially, what if Gandalf became shit? What if Gandalf, essentially you found Gandalf in a tavern, completely broken down? Please, Gandalf, can you tell me what happened? Yes, like this is a very interesting character study. It's a very interesting character premise. And I always love character premises because I myself am a character nerd. I just love characters. as you can see, the Wheel of Time, I spent so much time talking about, Randall Thorpe. Moving forth, there is a problem with the Name of the Wind, however, and this problem gets even worse in Wise Man's Fear, the second book. And it is how the plot, essentially is inefficient. With The Eye of the World, we had generic plot. In here, you have a unique plot, but at the same time, there's not much time spent with the plot, and it is the Chandrians. I will not give spoilers. If you read the story, you know what they are. The Chandrians and Kavoth have a beef going on. They did something terrible to him. Then he comes back by the end of the book, and in the second book, it's like he goes out of the university, away, and there's just a lot of events that happen, and we don't really get to explore this plot with the Chandrians. We don't get to explore the plot with the Chandrians. That one gets pushed aside so that we can have Kavoth going around sleeping with women, and a lot of the time that's not even the most interesting thing about Kavoth. Let me tell you this, I think there's a lot of things that are interesting about Kavoth. His romantic life and how many fairies he can shag, or how many fairies he has shagged, is literally the least interesting part about Kavoth's story. There is so much interesting about this guy. He is literally Gandalf, but in a tavern as a nobody. We just end up meandering around and around and around, and there's not much of the story that I was hooked on. On top of that, there's not much of the Chandrians. So there you go. Let's talk about Mistborn, specifically Era 1. Now, I really love Brandon Sanderson. I think he is structurally the most skilled fantasy author currently alive and currently publishing and writing. There's just a lot of things that I love about him. His magic system is another thing. I love the world building too. It's kind of good. But at the same time, you just have to admit this man is not a good character writer. He is a very basic, generic character writer if he writes a character. On top of that, on a career that spans thousands of pages, there is barely any great characters that I can really point to. Dallana is one very good example that I really think is great. Kaladin is another great example, but from Mistborn itself, which is one of his, essentially, I'm not sure if it's the most well-sold, but I think it's very well sold. Yes, it's one of the most well-sold fantasy stories of all time. And so from that particular story, there's just not enough good character work. Most of it is just very, very simple, very generic. A lot of people out there have done them. And on top of that, he doesn't even do it the best. Essentially, with Vin, you have the brooding, orphaned child who has had a terrible past, and so now they are brooding and all the time just silent, and they don't trust anyone. And over the story, she changes and she becomes a more family-oriented individual, right? Which is a good, nice character arc to witness. But at the same time, there's just a lot of blueprint for this stuff out there. It's not unique at all. You have Kelsier, who's also not unique at all. There is just nothing special. Like, for example, Randall Thorpe. Come on. Randall Thorpe is super unique, and I hope he is very well written, but from what I have seen, he's far better written compared to Vane or compared to Kelsier. And so from the Mistborn, I just really do not think that the character work is good. A lot of it I think is very basic, very generic, very simple. It just gets the job done, but the plot at least happens to be very good. So there you go. Mistborn, I don't like the character work. So the next book is going to be The Blade itself. Now, I love this book. I really do. I think the character work is phenomenal, unlike Mistborn. I think the world building is good. I think the prose, it's just an experience. The Blade itself is an experience, but it does have one major problem, and it is that the whole book, even though it is massive, even though it is huge, even though it's a fat, humongous book, you still have a prologue. The entire book is a prologue for book 2. The entire book feels like just a huge introduction. An introduction into an epic story. Yes, it is an epic story, but I'll be damned. Other authors compared to him are capable of doing a lot more with the first book. Heck, in terms of plot, you can take a look at Mistborn, The Final Empire. In that book, we have a complete story that is extremely satisfying. The Final Empire in no way does it feel an introduction for book 2. And it is still, book 2 is still connected to Eye of the World. The Final Empire, yes. So essentially, this story, it suffers from this feeling where I feel like everything that is happening is a setup, and it is all just, nothing about it is contained. Nothing about it is satisfactory, right? And reading the ending was unrewarding. I was happy to see, the Bloody Nine in action, Logan's alter ego, but other than that, I was not happy. I was not happy with the ending. I was not happy with the ending. Finally, let's talk about The Rage of Dragons. I really love The Rage of Dragons, and I love a lot of things about it. I love the plot. I love the character of Tao. Tao is one of the, essentially, like in the last half a decade, he's one of the best written fantasy characters. I am not joking, this character is really well written and is well constructed. I also love the world building and how there's a lot of rich themes built into the world. Now, let me tell you this. I do not love the copious amount of action in this story. There is way too much action. I don't know what Evan Winter was thinking, but essentially every few chapters is a huge action scene. All of that time could have actually, all of that page time or page count could have actually been given to the supporting cast, because you see that too much action is problem number one. Problem number two, the supporting cast do not get time to shine. The supporting cast feel like sticks, okay? They feel like, just cliches. And all of that time that it was spent writing these action scenes could have actually been spent writing, given the supporting cast more time. I'll be back from prayer. Okay, so there's still 15 minutes before the prayer, so I can do it. I can finish it. I can finish filming this video. Where was I? I don't remember where I was. Yes, all of that page count that was just thrown into action could have been given to flesh out the supporting cast, and it makes me sad because a lot of the supporting cast are very interesting. So that is going to be it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed this. Please tell me a great book that you love and that you still have a criticism for. I hope that you enjoyed this. Have a nice day. Bye.